Welcome back to the Union Campaigner YouTube channel. I'm Joaquin. Today we're going to be making the ration bag. So today I'm going to be showing you a tutorial, well, not a tutorial, but like a how-to on how to make the Civil War ration bag and just a bit of history on the patterns and the bag itself. So to get started, I have here the Sanitary Commission Bulletin that published the instructions and pattern for making this bag, and you can see that there. So the instructions are pretty vague on how to make the bag itself. I'll read the instructions. Ration bags should be made of enameled cloth. The 4 points should be sewed together so as to form a flat bottom and the sides sewed up to make it into a bag. The top should be bound with cotton and tape strings run in. So basically, it's very vague as to how to hem the edges, how to sew it. So you could do this almost any way you want. You could make it fancy, you could make it cheap, however way you want. I've seen people have made it so that this is all hemmed and the tape runs out, hole is grommeted there, or they're all over, and there's many different styles and patterns, but today I'm just going to be showing you what most likely would have been made. So the Sanitary Commission bag was posted in the Sanitary Commission Bulletin for families or people in general to make for the soldiers, and so they wanted to give them a pattern so they could just make it on their own at home. So it's very likely that anybody wouldn't have liked the raw edge, and so they would have hemmed it or made it however they wanted sewing wise. But I mean, you could have made it raw edged or really fancy, so I just made it quick and easy, so I just did hemmed edges. So I have a bit more information on it. So in the Customs of Service for Non-Commissioned Officers by August V. Couts, in page 118, article 704, he states, with strong and well-made little bags for keeping the sugar, coffee, salt, pepper, flour, and etc. separate. His pantry, kitchen, and bedchamber would be there wherever he halted for the night, and in such a case, with no waiting for wagons to come up before supper can be had, and none to load up after breakfast, the march of an army would be greatly facilitated. So he states here how handy these little bags come in for holding food, hardtack, coffee beans, sugar, salt, whatever you want. So these have been obviously proven by the experienced people, the veterans, that these are very handy. So to get started on making the bag itself, I have the pieces cut out here. So I have the cotton binding, and then I also have the blank for the bag. So to get started, we're gonna have to make this, which is only just plain cotton drill. You can use cotton duck if you really wanted to, but they probably would have only made it with cotton drill because it's lighter, it wouldn't be as thick. So it states it's to be made of enameled cloth. So the original recipe is a little bit complex, and it could be a little fire hazardous with boiled linseed oil or any of the other recipes that they have. So to start cheap and easy, I use Rust-Oleum Gloss Black Premium Latex Paint. So in the end, you might want to store food in a latex paint bag, but I store them in little modern bags in there. So that's how I do it, but personally you can do it however you want. So So here we're ready to paint, and I have my paintbrush, nice disposable surface, and the fabric. So I personally would use the nicer side for the top, and then the fuzzy side for the bottom, which would be cut up into points later on. So to start, we're gonna put one coating of paint on. I usually do 2 coatings in the end, but for now I'll start with 1, and then later we'll come back and do a second coating. But so usually I just, not too much paint because you don't want it to leak on the other side. You can put primer, but I don't. I wanted to do it cheap and easy way, so I just did just the paint. So just try to do a nice white top that'll seal it, so you can put a nice heavier second coating. So I'll put this on, and I guess as we're painting, so this enameled cloth, it's supposed to make the bag waterproof, although I'm not sure how waterproof the bag in the end is, although the paint does seal it up and make it, I guess, water resistant. So I usually leave a bit on the side that's facing me so that you have a little bit of surface that you're not getting paint all over your hands, and then later I'll turn it around and finish that side. Make sure you get as much as you can, but trying to keep the globs so that you don't have a bumpy surface when you're finished. And the paint I'm using, it looks blue when it's wet, so don't think I'm making this blue. Now, people do make different colors, but during the Civil War, enameled cloth was generally black. So you could do this however, whichever color you want, but I'm doing black for sake of authenticity and general knowledge of what they did back then. So the paint I'm using is quick dry, so it should dry within 4 hours. So once I'm done with this coating, then I'll let it sit dry and then come back and do the second coating, and then when that's done, we would do the sewing. So now that the second coating of paint has dried, now it's time to move on to the binding. So for this part of the project, you're going to need the binding, which would be a piece of the same cotton that you used for your bag part that you painted. You need a piece of cotton 2.5 inches wide, 13 inches and 13 inches long with, and then when we sew, we'll use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So with that being said, I'll show you what other materials we'll need. So for this project, you'll need a sewing machine or a needle or whatever, and then white thread, and the instructions say to run the binding with cotton tape, so you can use that, or if you prefer, you can use twine, whichever you want. And then for pulling the cotton tape through the binding, you could use a safety pin or one of these handy different tools to pull it through the binding. So for this part of the project, sewing on the binding, you're going to want to find, actually first, you're going to want to cut this rectangular piece using a printed out template or trace template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on here and then cut this out. So I'll do that and then I'll meet you back when I have this cut out. Alright, so now that I have the 4 points cut into the piece and trim the sides, now I'm going to sew the binding on. So basically what you want to start with is take the right sides, actually, yeah, you would, so if you want a raw edge on your bag, skip this part, but what I do is I take the two ends of the binding and then I just double roll it like that and then sew it. And then after that, when I have my two nice edges, then I take the two right sides, or right sides, and I of the binding in the bag, and then put that together and sew it across. So I'll do that now, and I'll meet you back after I finish that. So. Alright, so now that I have my edge hems done, I'm gonna sew a single running stitch right down here, maybe about a quarter of an inch. And when I'm done with that, I'm gonna take the seam, fold it down, and then sew that. So I'll meet you back when I finish that. So what I just did is I took the right side of the binding and the right side of the bag piece, sewed it down, and then when you flip it on the right side, it would look like that. So that on the wrong side, I took the edge of the hem or the seam or whatever, the dirty edge, folded that over, and then took the other unsewed edge of the binding, flipped that over, folded that, and then sewed it, as you can see here. So now what I'm going to do is fold the bag in half, right sides together, making sure that I line up the points. And so now this step will be to sew a single running stitch, not single running stitch, but I'll sew down the side and then up this point, and then I'll come and do just this side of this point, weaving two openings here. And then when I'm done with that, I'll fold it, like push it together like that, as you can see, like that, and then I'll sew here, and then again on the other side here. And then once I'm done with that, I'll be done with the bag. I'll cut the needed amount of tape, and then the next step will be to sew right down here just to finish that edge off to keep it nice. So coming back, here's what I did. So on the ration bag, as you can probably see, I sewed up all four sides, making this, when you inside it out, it'll make a flat bottom. And then for the cotton tape, I just sewed all the way down the one open side to make it nicer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to inside this out and thread this through to make your ration bag. So there's your ration bag, but can't shed it without string. So there you have it, your own ration bag. These come in handy for anything from odds and ends to your rations that you're issued at events, and it actually comes in handy to keep meat in sometimes because of the waterproof outside that keeps grease in or keeps it out. But one thing I would recommend is, depending on what kind of paint you use, there can be a little bit of leakage on the inside. So I sometimes put a Ziploc bag or something to line it just so you don't get food poisoning. But that all just depends on what paint you use. So thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and watch other videos. Thanks for watching.